Members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, those following via social media, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I welcome you to the continuation of public meeting number 15 of today, Thursday, May 15th, 2025. At this time, I want to give a special word of welcome to the Honorable Minister of Finance, Ms. Marinka Gums, and her support staff. We have established a quorum of 8 members, and I invite you to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence from the following members due to work travel. MPs Labega, Lewis, Roseburg, and York. I have received notice of absence for medical reasons from MP Doran and MP Peterson, and I have received notice of absence from MP Myers. Are there any notifications from the floor at this time? I see that MP La Cruz.
A blessed afternoon, Madam Chair Lady. Thank you, SG, the Minister and her support staff, those in the Tribune, my fellow members of Parliament. Madam Chair Lady, I would like to encourage all our students that are have started their FBE exams today. And I'd like to congratulate all the teachers who have prepared them for this occasion. And I know it's somewhat bittersweet because you have prepared them to continue moving on, but do that. You have done it, and you have done a great job, and I want to recognize them and thank them. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP La Cruz. I don't see the need for any other. No, I do see the need. I don't know why my monitor is just showing seats, so I need to look at you and the cards. Okay, so let's adjourn just for a minute or two so that we can get that rectified. Meeting adjourned. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, we continue after having rectified that situation, and we were in the middle of notifications, and MP Otley had requested the floor, to whom I give the floor at this time. MP Otley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good day to the Honorable Minister of Finance, our support staff, the viewing and listening public. Madam Chair, I'd like to echo the sentiments of my colleague and Deputy Leader of United People's Party, Francisco La Cruz, wishing all the students a success in the FBE exams. I hope that we continue to have record-breaking numbers, and thank you to all the teachers, the institutions that have prepared our students for this moment. Also, as a MP, also as a proud brother, I would like to publicly shed some light and thank Dante Otley, Mr. Josedi Grill for their act yesterday, saving 60 prisoners. Yesterday there was a riot at the prison and the fire got out of hand. They were in a meeting at the time, and unfortunately when the fire broke out, all of the guards left. This is why we speak in our justice committees about proper training and understanding. All the guards left, and while some prisoners did cause the fire, some were trapped in their cells. They acted as heroes. They got the keys from the prison guards, and they freed 60 prisoners. Had that not happened, can you imagine the headlines today? St. Martin losing 60 prisoners burned in their cells. So, if the Minister of Justice won't do it, I will publicly thank them and for their acts, and I hope that whatever the issue is can be resolved. And to those prisoners that are listening, I hope that a lesson was learned, as well as sometimes things go too far. So I hope that all parties can come to the table and find an amicable solution for what is going on in our country. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Otley. I don't see any other request for notification. So, members of Parliament, we continue with the agenda point for this public meeting of Parliament, namely an update from the Minister of Finance on the technical issues delaying the ratification and publication of the 2025 national budget. This document, the request, is registered on the IS 655 of this parliamentary year, and it is dated February the 27th of this year. I just want to remind the members of Parliament that as this is a public meeting, the usage of interruptions can be allowed. And as usual, I remind you that in accordance with Article 43 of the Rules of Order, it is the chairperson who may permit interruptions. Once these interruptions are to seek clarification, challenge assertions, or contribute additional information to the discussion, but it should always consist of brief remarks or questions without any introduction. And members will be allowed 3 interruptions per agenda point. We go over to the agenda point for today. As I mentioned, it was on February the 27th that we received a letter, IS 655, from the members of Parliament Doran, York, Irian, Otley, La Cruz, and Lewis, with a request that a public meeting of Parliament be convened to discuss the agenda point as outlined. The presence of the Minister of Finance was also requested, and this meeting started on Thursday, May 8th, during which the Minister of Finance, Minister Gums, gave some opening remarks and provided answers to questions posed by members of Parliament during the second agenda point of a previous meeting held on April 14th regarding the same matter. And that one was requested by the Minister of Finance. Thereafter, in the session for this meeting, in accordance with the speaker's list, members of Parliament were given the opportunity to pose questions to the Minister in the first round. And it is important to note that the answers that were presented during the meeting of May 8th have also been submitted in writing and can be found under the document here of Parliament numbered 1017. So our IS 1017, and that is dated May 12th of this year. Additionally, we can confirm that all the letters sent by the members Doran, Irian, and York pertaining to this subject matter and addressed to the Minister of Finance have received a response. And these responses have been, of course, made available to all members of Parliament. The meeting of May 8th, so the continuation of which this is, was adjourned to allow the minister time to prepare the answers to the questions posed by members of Parliament during the meeting. So with that introduction, I now give the floor to the Minister of Finance, Ms. Marinka Gums, to answer the questions posed by the members of Parliament in the first round. Minister, you have the floor.
Honorable Chair Lady of Parliament, honorable members of Parliament, Secretary General and support staff, members of the media, radio listeners, and all others under the sound of my voice, good afternoon and blessed day. Madam Chair, before addressing the questions posed in round one regarding Budget 2025, allow me just a few to speak about an important matter raised after yesterday's press briefing. I would like to begin by clarifying that my statement during the briefing was specifically in reference to civil servants. Following the briefing, I received several phone calls and messages from concerned teachers employed at subsidized schools regarding the 2% indexation scheduled to take effect as of June 2025. The retroactive payment for the period of January to May will be dispersed in July 2025, and the 8% vacation allowance is slated to be paid in June 2025. These announcements have led to questions, particularly from staff in the subsidized school sector. I want to emphasize that this matter falls under the responsibility of the Ministry of Education, and the Minister of Education will therefore provide further clarification. While the payroll of subsidized schools is managed by their respective school boards, I fully acknowledge the importance of ensuring alignment and cohesion in the treatment of all educators, while they serve in public, or whether they serve in public or subsidized institutions. There should be no distinction in how we value our teachers. It is therefore critical that there is clear communication, coordination, and planning among all stakeholders, including the ministries and school boards, to ensure that no teacher is left behind or feels that attention is being given to one group over the other. To be clear, this is not a budgetary issue. The 2025 budget, once ratified, includes provisions for both the indexation and the vacation allowance for teachers in both public and subsidized schools. The Ministry of Education is currently reviewing the matter and will engage in the necessary discussions with the school boards to clarify the payment timeline for subsidized school teachers. An update will be provided by the Minister of Education once those discussions have taken place. I will now proceed with answering the questions posed by the honorable members of Parliament. MP Duran asked, will the government make any payments based on the proposed 2025 budget despite its lack of ratification? Madam Chair, through you, as previously mentioned, the amended 2024 budget remains the legal basis for financial operations, even though the 2025 budget has not yet been fully approved. In the meantime, government will continue to make the necessary payments to ensure that basic public services remain operational. This is a common practice when there is a delay in budget approval. The previous year's budget or other legal mechanisms can be used temporarily to maintain continuity in government functioning. Next question. What legal basis is the government issuing or using to justify any expenditures beyond exceeding the 50,000 limit made in the last couple of months. Through you, Madam Chair, the government is operating under the provision of the law that allows spending to continue based on the previous year's budget when the new budget has not yet been approved. This means that as long as the spending is necessary, follows the established rules, and is for essential services such as expenditures, can proceed even if they exceed the 50,000 guilder limit, provided they remain within the legal framework. In addition, payments owed to creditors above 50,000 guilders may also be executed in accordance with the applicable legal provisions. Next question. If any payments above this threshold have been made, where do they align with the constitutional provisions within the Kingdom Financial Supervision Law? Through you, Madam Chair, as previously mentioned, the amended 2024 budget remains the legal basis for financial operations, even though the 2025 budget has not yet been officially approved. Next question. How many civil servants will reach the Jubileum milestone? Madam Chair, through you, allow me to give a breakdown for the 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, or 45 years of service between January 2024 and December 2025. 2024 years, Finance 13, VSA 5, TIAT 9, AZET 32, VROMI 5, Education 6. For 2025, Finance 10, VSA 14, TIAT 2, AZET 30, VROMI 7, and Education 3. Unfortunately, I am unable at this time to provide a detailed breakdown specific to the Ministry of Justice. However, I can confirm that the combined total for the Jubilee payments for the Ministry of Justice for both years 2024 and 2025 amounts to 72. This brings the total number of Jubilee cases across all ministries for both years to 208. Allow me to clarify, Jubilee years that were already legally established have been processed and paid out. However, based on the information received, the newly added Jubilee years, such as 15 and 20 years, have not yet been processed. The advices for these are currently being drafted, and these payments are scheduled to be made within this year. As such, of the 208 total, it is expected that approximately 60% will be paid out during the course of this year. Should a further breakdown by year, category, or ministry be deemed necessary, this can be provided in writing. Next question. How will this payout be accommodated without the ratification? Or are these payments on hold based on the fact that the 2025 budget has not been ratified? If so, what are some immediate actions that can be taken by the government to facilitate this inconvenience, given that the budget has not been ratified? Madam Chair, through you, I would like to clarify that the payments related to the Jubilee are not on hold due to the budget. The delay in processing these payments was due to the fact that P&O was awaiting the finalization of the necessary advices, which depended on the legal implementation of the new Jubilee milestones, such as 15 and 20 years of service. Now that the national decree formalizing the 2% indexation and the revised Jubilee years have been officially published on May 5th, 2025, P&O will proceed with finalizing the advices, and the individuals concerned will be paid accordingly. This will allow for the Jubilee payments to be processed inclusive of both 2% indexations. Next question. What is the projected total amount of payouts for Jubilees of the fiscal year 2024 and 2025? Will the full amount of the 2025 Jubilee payments be explicitly reflected in the forthcoming 2025 Budget 2.0? Madam Chair, the Jubilee accounting posts fall under the budget line item Bruto Loanen and Saladison. This is precisely why the budget was structured in a consolidated manner, ingeklapt. As long as there are sufficient funds within the bruto lonen en salarissen allocation, a budget amendment will not be necessary. At this point, there is no budgetary holdup for the payment of the Jubilee. Once P&O finalizes the relevant advices, the payments can be processed without delay. The Jubilee payments can be executed, and during the assessment of the upcoming budget amendment, we will review whether sufficient funds remain to cover the full year. It is important to note that in 2025, we are also accounting for payments related to 2024. Should it be deemed during the amendment process that the current allocation is insufficient to cover Jubilee payments through year end, the post will be adjusted accordingly. However, I would like to emphasize that the 2025 budget as approved contains adequate funding to cover Jubilee payments to date. Since the budget spans the entire year, any required adjustments for year-end payments will be made in the context of the budget amendment process. Next question. Will the multi-year budget framework from 2026 and beyond reflect the recurring costs of the Jubilee payments? Madam Chair, I would like to note that Jubilee payments are included in each annual budget, inclusive 2026 and beyond. As in the 2025 budget, these payments are accounted for under the broader category bruto lonen en salarissen. In contrast, in the uitgeklapte 2024 budget, they were specifically listed under budget post 41026. Had the 2025 budget followed the same uitgeklapte structure, we would have faced challenges in executing the Jubilee payments. Any shortfall under the specific post would have required us to return to Parliament for a budget amendment in order to proceed with the payments. However, under the current ingeklapte 2025 budget format, the Jubilee is part of the overall bruto lonen en salarissen post. This provides the necessary flexibility to reallocate funds, for example, from unfilled vacancies to cover any additional amounts required. This is a clear example of how the ingeklapte budget structure supports more efficient and effective government operations by allowing for better financial flexibility and responsiveness. Next question. Will the civil servants be affected under the same legal basis as the vacation pay, thereby ensuring equal legal certainty? Madam Chair, through you. As previously stated, the national decree regarding the indexation and Jubilee has been officially published. As a result, P&O will now proceed with the drafting all relevant advices for the new Jubilee milestones, 15, 20 years, etc., to be paid out. The legislation governing these payments takes retroactive effect as of January 1, 2025. Next question. Can Parliament be provided with a timeline for the drafting of the execution of law that will give effect to the Jubilee payments? Madam Chair, through you, the national decree containing general measures in relation to Jubilee payment and the indexation of 2% for the years 2024 and 2025 has been published in the official publication with number AB 2025, number 17 on May 5th, 2025. I now move on to questions posed by MP Arian. Question 1. The last time the minister was here, she mentioned stakeholders. Who are these stakeholders that the minister keeps referring to? We keep referring to stakeholders, and that question was never answered. Through you, Madam Chair, actually, this question was answered when I stated we consulted with YZ and Way, CFT, BZK Council of Advice, His Excellency Governor Bailey, Chair Lady of Parliament, and the Griffier. Next question. MP Arian stated that he previously asked about the Teweo, since it was acknowledged that the Teweo was not included in the budget. he'd like to understand, was there an official advice written about it? And if so, why would the Council of Ministers base that advice on the income that didn't actually exist? Madam Chair, through you, at no point did I state that Teweo was not included in the budget. In fact, several Teweo projects are already incorporated into the 2025 budget, which was approved by Parliament in January of this year. However, during the course of 2025, various ministries secured additional Teweo funding, and those specific amounts were not included in the original budget, but will be incorporated in the upcoming budget amendment. I am not certain which advice the Honourable Member of Parliament is referring to. Next question. Did that advice go to the governor, and is it true that it had to be nullified? If so, can the minister clarify exactly what that advice was? Madam Chair, through you, once again, I do not know which advice the Honourable MP is referring to, and as such, I'm unable to provide an answer. Next question. The minister mentioned that effectively the money from Soul Beach is government's revenue. Sorry. That would mean that the budget is still wrong. If Soul Beach was paid out of the concession directly by the port or the airport, in this case the port, that would mean that the government got less revenue out of the concessions, which means that the 2025 budget is wrong. Can the minister confirm this? Madam Chair, through you, this is a technical question, and in the interest of transparency, I will provide a very technical yet hopefully clear answer. To start, the answer is no. The fact that the concessions are being paid directly by the port does not mean that the income in the budget is incorrect. It's important to understand the distinction between a budget and an annual report. A budget reflects projections, while the annual report shows actuals. In contrast to taxes, concessions are budgeted on an accrual basis, not a cash basis. This means that if the port owes government 4 million guilders in concessions per year, that amount is reflected in the budget because it represents the country's revenue, regardless of whether it will actually be paid in the specific year or not. In the financial system, this amount is booked as revenue, and at the same time, a receivable is recorded, representing funds to be collected from the harbor. Therefore, whether the port pays the amount directly to government or on behalf of government does not affect the revenue reflected in the budget. The 2025 budgeted concession revenue is not impacted because the accrual principle accounts for the obligation, not the payment timing or amount. So to reiterate, the approach used in the budget is accurate and consistent with proper accounting practices. And it is not incorrect if Soul Beach was paid partially by the port or not. All contractual agreements signed by the government must be supported by a formal advice, which clearly indicates a specific budget post to be used for that particular expense. The matter of payment is an accounting adjustment within the administration, whereby in this case, the receivable would be credited and the expense debited accordingly. The accounted concession revenue of St. Martin for the specific year would not be impacted in any way. Hoping this provides some clarity. Next question. I would like to request the fourth quarter rapportage 2024 and the first quarter rapportage 2025, where these documents already sent to CFT. Madam Chair, through you, these have not yet been sent to CFT. However, once they are finalized, I will ensure that a copy is sent to both the CFT and the members of Parliament. With regards to the Q4 report, they should be approved and sent to Parliament next week. Next question. What are the CFT's and the Council of Advisors' remarks on the budget? Madam Chair, through you, the remarks from both the Council of Advice and the CFT on the 2025 budget were included in the file that was submitted to Parliament, along with the government's responses to those remarks, as this is a mandatory part of the budget process. In addition, during my presentation of the 2025 budget, I clearly outlined the three key matters raised in the advice from CFT, which were: one, adjust the budget to the most recent actual figures; two, properly incorporate the repayments of the liquidity support loans into the budget based on the refinancing agreement; and three, provide an adequate explanation for the loan request of 52 million guilders for investments in 2025. During my presentation, I clearly explained how each of these were incorporated into the final version of the 2025 budget, which was subsequently approved by Parliament in January 2025. Next question. We're almost halfway through the year, and by now we know what the government actually brought in from January to May. So my question is, will the updated 2025 budget that's coming to Parliament next month be based on those real numbers, or will it still be based on earlier projections? Can the minister confirm whether the first half of the year will be reflected in the budget and that only the rest of the year will be projected going forward? Madam Chair, through you, yes, the Member of Parliament, it would have indeed been ideal to update the budget with the actual figures by now. However, as I mentioned before, when I initially came to Parliament and indicated that I would return in June with an updated version of the budget, I was told that such a timeline was too late and not acceptable. Following that feedback, I consulted with the necessary stakeholders and taken into consideration the advice from the Kingdom Council of Ministers. Given the shared goal of moving swiftly, which Parliament also emphasized, I made a decision to return with the same version of the budget that had already been reviewed. We will return with an updated version of the 2025 budget in the third quarter, which will be updated based on the actual figures to date and address any outstanding remarks from the CFT's Article 12 advice. At this time, Madam Chair, MP Arian posed several questions in reference to Soul Beach. And I am going to respond to these questions. However, I need to state that the responses came directly from the Minister of TIAT, at least most. Exactly how was Soul Beach paid? How much money came from TIAT, from finance, from the port and other government entities? Can we please receive a detailed breakdown of how Soul Beach was paid? Total destination fee, $700,000. Government contribution, $500,000. Port group sponsorship, $50,000. Airport sponsorship, $40,000. Other private businesses on the island, $110,000, which makes up the balance. Was Soul Beach paid as a subsidy? Yes, it was. Madam Chair, through you. Next question. If Soul Beach is a company, a U.S. LLC, how is it possible that Soul Beach could request a subsidy and be paid a subsidy by the government of St. Martin? Madam Chair, through you, the National Subsidy Ordinance distinguishes between annual subsidies and incidental subsidies. While Article 8.2 defines eligibility for the annual subsidy requiring an entity to be incorporated by notarial deed and registered with the Chamber of Commerce, the incidental subsidy is a separate discretionary measure. It is designed to support projects that deliver significant benefits to St. Martin, even if the entity receiving the subsidy is registered abroad. In the case of the Soul Beach Music Festival, the subsidy was awarded as an incidental subsidy. Despite Soul Beach being registered in the United States, the evaluation criteria for this grant focus on its community impact and economic benefits. Therefore, the funding decision fully complied with the intended framework of the ordinance and does not conflict with the local registration provisions for annual subsidies.
Minister, with your indulgence, I see MP Iran has gone to the lectern for interruptions, and I allow MP Iran to make a brief interruption at this time. MP Iran.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you, Minister, for the answer so far. I just want to clarify, or if we, while answering the questions for Soul Beach, if you could clarify if this is your answers or if the answers are given by TIAT. So the ones that are Ministry of Finance and Ministry of TIAT. And the reason I want to confirm is because now you're stating that incidental subsidies, because I have the legislation in front of me, incidental subsidies can be given to companies on St. Martin. That's what you're saying. So I want to clarify because a lot of companies have requested in the past, and that's the law that has been told to them you have to have a foundation. So is this a MinFin answer or MinTIAT answer?
Thank you, MP Iran. Minister, you may continue, and if possible, address MP Iran's question.
Thank you for the question, MP Arian. The answers provided are all from the Minister of TIAT. I will go on to the next question. Was this a misclassification? If so, will we receive a rectification in the upcoming budget 2025? Yes, this was indeed a misclassification, a practice that has persisted over the past years. The Ministry of Finance has acknowledged that allocating these subsidies via the festival's budget does not meet proper financial practices. As a result, corrective amendments have been made, and in the upcoming budget 2025, this misclassification will be rectified to ensure that subsidies are classified accurately moving forward. Next question. Is Soul Beach a registered entity on the island? Madam Chair, through you, no, Soul Beach is not. Next question. Did Soul Beach request funds or did the government initiate the process? Madam Chair, through you, the process for contributing to Soul Beach began when the official request was submitted by the entity. Did the Soul Beach advice go through all the proper channels? And if Soul Beach was handled incorrectly, does this impact the budget in any way? Madam Chair, through you, although advice was received from the Department of Legal Affairs, of which all recommendations were incorporated before finalizing the advice, a procedural step at the Department of FBB was inadvertently missed as the process moved forward. This oversight has no material impact on the budget.
Minister, again, with your indulgence, I see MP Iran is requesting the floor for an interruption, and I gave him the opportunity to do so.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Just again for clarity, because the Minister is now reading the questions given to her, answers given to her by the Minister of TIAT. But at the end of the day, it's the government, and at the end of the day, it's the Council of Ministers' approval. So I need to know, because you're reading the answers. The answers that you are reading, I'm assuming that you stand by. So I would even want, Madam Chair, that we take 5 minutes for the Minister to read the answers, and because the Minister reading these answers means that she owns them. So I want to be very clear on that. I would prefer the Minister take time, read the answers, if she can stand by them or not, because we can't go and say tomorrow to the public, oh no, but in press briefing next week, no, that wasn't my answers, that was the Minister of TIAT answers, because we had a couple of weeks to be able to just clarify its answers. The Minister has a legal team, a staff. I want to confirm if the Minister is agreeing with the answers or not. Thank you.
Thank you, MP. I was just going to remark that you were stretching your interruption, but but I'm sure the Minister got the gist of your question, suggestion, and would react to it, if not now, at some point, I hope, Minister, if you can. Minister, you may continue.
Madam Chair, allow me to take the advice of MP Arian, and although I feel I know what I want to say, I want to be very clear and consult with my team as to moving forward on the questions to these answers, the answers to these questions.
So, Minister, do I
Few
understand
minutes.
you to, or would you like those minutes now? And then you
Yes.
will, okay, so we're going to adjourn and give you the opportunity to caucus on the comments by MP Iran with respect to the answers to the questions, especially as they relate, or maybe solely as they relate to Soul Beach. So I'm going to adjourn this meeting for 5 minutes. That will take us to about 5 minutes past the hour of 4. Meeting adjourned. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience as we had a brief adjournment just to get some clarity from the Minister on the answers provided and the use of interruptions on the basis of those answers. So now I would give the floor again to the Minister to respond to the comments and concerns raised during interruptions by a Member of Parliament. Minister, you may continue.
Madam Chair, thank you once again. I want to clarify the following. These questions that were posed by MP Arian on Soul Beach were matters that initially I said I would have the minister or pass these questions on to the relevant minister, as I believe she's the one who signed off to this agreement and would be best fitting to answer these questions. However, out of respect to MP Arian, I passed these questions on to the minister and had her respond. Now, whether or not I am in agreement with the statements provided by Minister Heiliger, I think what should be most taken into consideration now is that these concerns should then be passed on to Minister of TIAT for her response to the MP in question.
Minister, with your indulgence, I see we have MP Otley requesting interruption. MP Otley, you may briefly state your interruption.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, not only is the Minister of Finance in a coalition, the Minister of Finance is also in COM and the same party member as the Minister of TIAT. The Minister of TIAT does not pay. The Minister of Finance pays. So with the explanation that is given, what is asked by my person to the Minister of Finance, is the route correct in your purview? Thank you.
Thank you, MP Otley. I see the Minister is briefly caucusing about that, I believe. And Minister, are you ready to continue? Minister Gums, you may continue.
Madam Chair, once again, in respect to the question posed by MP Otley, if MP Otley would allow me to continue with the questions and the answers given by Minister of TIAT, that question that he just posed would be responded to, because it is a follow-up question.
Thank you, Minister, and you may proceed with providing the answers to questions posed by members of Parliament.
Was Soul Beach wrongfully paid out? And if so, do we have to request the funds back? Do we have to align the budget differently? Madam Chair, through you, no, Soul Beach was not wrongfully paid out, although a misclassification in budget allocations existed over previous years. This issue has already been addressed. Next question. There was no legal basis because Soul Beach is not a foundation. There's no legal basis because it was not signed off by the governor. So what exactly was the legal basis to be able to pay out Soul Beach? Madam Chair, through you, the legal basis for the payout is the National Subsidy Ordinance. Incidental subsidies under this ordinance are specifically designed to support projects that deliver benefits to St. Martin, and they do not require the recipient to be a foundation or to be locally registered. The registration requirement, such as that detailed in Article 8.2, applies only to annual subsidies. In the case of Soul Beach, receiving an incidental subsidy complies with the ordinance despite its U.S. registration, as the criteria for incidental support focus on the event's merits and impact rather than on legal form of the entity. Is Soul Beach, next question, addressed in the amendments to come from Parliament? Madam Chair, through you, none are needed. I missed the question. Did the Soul Beach advice go through all proper channels? And if Soul Beach was handled incorrectly, does this impact the budget in any way? Although I believe I did answer it, so my apologies, but I'll answer again. Madam Chair, through you. Although advice was received from the Department of Legal Affairs, of which all recommendations were incorporated before finalizing the advice, a procedural step at the Department of FBA was inadvertently missed. As the process moved forward, this oversight has no material impact on the budget. The minister mentioned that she would highly recommend that SWABE handles the amendments proposed by Parliament. How does the minister see this playing out practically? Would SWABE sit in on budgetary debates, take notes, and then edit for us? Madam Chair, through you, to clarify, I did not say that SWABE would handle the amendments themselves. What I stated was that SWABE could help bring clarity to the amendment process. This could be done either by involving SWABE directly or by expanding the scope of the current TWO assignment. The goal here is to ensure we have a clear understanding of how amendments should be drafted, what should or should not be included, how to handle trickle-down effects, adjustments to totals in the national ordinance, and so on. As mentioned before, a helpful template would also be useful. To be clear, SWABE will not and cannot draft the amendments. However, they can be assigned to engage with all stakeholders to help us reach clear agreements on the content and structure of the amendment process. This way, everyone is aligned and on the same page moving forward. I now move on to questions posed by MP La Cruz. The only thing that we're going to get now is the same budget, but the only changes will be the integration of the amendments that were submitted by government and Parliament. The minister shakes her head in agreement. Madam Chair, yes, indeed, it will be the same budget with only the integration of the amendments. Next question posed by MP La Cruz. I think the minister is setting herself up for a big disappointment. During the CC and the public meeting, there were concerns brought with regards to mistakes in the budget. Were those concerns addressed? Was the budget fixed? In previous debates, the MP stated that he would focus on policies and not the numbers. This time, he will be revising the numbers. The first thing he will be looking at is to make sure that all the questions concerning numbers were fixed. It will save me some time. If it's the same thing we are getting, then we will still be here in December. We will still not have a passed budget. Madam Chair, through you, I'm not sure which mistakes MP La Cruz were referring to. MP De Weaver mentioned some heading errors, but those were already corrected in the version of the budget that was approved in January. On one hand, when I said I would return in June with an amendment to the budget, that was seen as an issue. Now that I've said I've coming back with the quicker approach, it still seems to be an issue. At this point, the main goal is to get the budget passed as soon as possible. The current approach is the fastest and most efficient way to do so. If we were to make changes now, the process would have to go back to the CFT, which usually takes about 2 weeks. After that, it would go to the Council of Advice, which typically takes another 4 weeks, followed by internal review by Yazet and Way, which adds another 2 weeks or more. When you add all of that up, it makes sense to move forward in this way, especially since I understood that Parliament also stressed and understood the importance of having an approved budget in place for the country. Next question. The minister asked 3 questions on the way moving forward with amendments. I would like to get a consensus from Parliament or even government on how we are going to move forward to avoid this happening again. Who are those questions addressed to? Madam Chair, through you, the questions raised are directed to all stakeholders, Parliament, government, and the governor. That is exactly why it is important that we arrive at one unified answer rather than receiving different responses from each party. This is why I expressed my intention to engage SWABE, or, if possible, to broaden the scope of the TWU budgetary support assignment to include this matter. The goal is to bring clarity by engaging all relevant stakeholders so that we can develop a shared understanding of the situation and take the necessary steps to prevent similar issues from arising in the future. I now move on to questions posed by MP Otley, who asked, how are bills being paid for 2025? Madam Chair, through you, bills are being paid through the same process that has always been followed with regard to which budget is currently being used. The 2024 budget remains the applicable legal basis at this time. Next question. MP Otley, Madam Chair, through you, is requesting a copy of the advice from Yazet and Way for the budget for 2025 on the situation that is happening now. Madam Chair, through you, any advice from the Department of Legal Affairs and Legislation is an internal advice and as such cannot be shared. However, the advice from the Council of Advice is shared with Parliament, as well as the NADA report in which the advice from the Council of Advice is addressed.
Minister, I see MP Otley taking the floor for an interruption, and I allow him to do so at this moment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, during a previous budget debate, I had a recent discussion back and forth with the Prime Minister pertaining to GEBE with documents. I understood GEBE is not obligated. To my understanding, I am asking for advice from a government apparatus from Yazet and Way. Can it be provided confidentiality document? So a confidential document. As a member of Parliament, I'm asking for a document from the body of government.
Thank you, MP Otley. Your question is clear. I just want, before the minister answers, I just want to interject something here and a recommendation to the government via the minister who is here that if it's a policy or procedure or whatever, but that be clear in terms of classification of documents when it comes to sharing with Parliament. That's not something of this meeting that I'm asking, but it's just a suggestion to the government via the minister who is here that be clear and that we don't continue to have a discussion what documents are, which are not. So, Minister, if you want to take that along, please, but I would ask you to address the question raised by MP Otley. Minister, you may continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your question, MP Otley. Unfortunately, this document, too, cannot be shared even through a confidential route.
MP Otley, I saw from your gesture that you have a question for me. There's no way you can ask me a question, but in all seriousness, I don't mind having a discussion with you on the topic if it's that what you want, but we can't do it in here. I can't cut a meeting, for us to have that discussion. So the minister has made a statement, whether we agree with it or not. It is something that any one of we can ask that it be clarified or further elaborated upon, but the minister has made a statement, and I would now allow the minister to continue.
Next question. Was an advice given by CFT? I would like to request this advice. Madam Chair, through you, on September 29, 2024, the CFT issued its advice based on Article 11 of the Kingdom Act on Financial Supervision for Curaçao and St. Martin. This advice was subsequently received by Parliament and included in my presentation on the Budget 2025 as previously stated. On April 29, 2025, CFT sent a letter in which it stated that the CFT is awaiting the Budget 2025. Next question. The minister is awaiting an advice report from the Council of Advice guaranteed that 90% of the time changes will have to be made. Madam Chair, through you, The advice from the Council of Advice has been received, and we are currently finalizing the NADA report in order to forward it to Parliament. The budget 2025 is expected to be sent to Parliament early next week. Next question. Are there any penalties for default of any deadlines with the Netherlands? And if not, what discussions were had that would allow us to surpass any instructions for future reference? Madam Chair, through you, there are no penalties that St. Martin have to be paid for defaulting on deadlines. As previously stated, we remain in contact with BZK, updating them on the progress and approach. Next question. I would like to know the remaining budget for each ministry for 2024 pertaining to projects and activities pertaining to the ability to pay personnel and the remaining consultant budget that remains for 2024. This is very important to know in order to ensure payments because we don't have a 2025 budget at the moment. Madam Chair, through you, in response to the Honourable MP's request regarding the remaining budget, I would like to clarify that the 2024 budget is currently being applied to the year 2025 in the interim. This means it is not a case where the amounts spent in 2024 are subtracted and the remainder carried over to 2025. Instead, the full 2024 budget is treated as the working budget for 2025 until the new budget is approved. For example, if the 2024 budget allocated 1 million guilders for payroll, then the same 1 million guilders is considered available for payroll in 2025 to continue operations. Next question. The hindrance of budget 2025 hinders everyone. But if we were playing politics, the longer it goes on, the less this government is able to produce. It benefits the opposition. Through you, Madam Chair, the budget impacts everyone indeed, and while it may appear to benefit the opposition in some way, we must remember that we are all elected to serve the people of St. Martin. I sincerely hope
Minister?
that politics...
If you give me a moment, please, so that I can allow MP La Cruz to make an interruption. MP La Cruz, could you follow for me the interruption guidelines and just keep it brief? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Madam Chair Lady, I'd like the Minister to go back and explain me in the National Ordinance of Subsidies what she referred to Article 8 when it comes to annual and incidental subsidies and the difference between the two when it comes to applying and what is considered a natural person or a business on St. Martin. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP La Cruz, for that interruption. Minister, I want to make a suggestion here. I hear the questions, I hear the concerns from members of parliament, and now for the good workings of this meeting, I ask of the minister if the interruption by MP La Cruz, for example, is one of the things that the minister plans to get back from the Minister of TIAT is my question. Then at least we have that clear. And I didn't ask the floor. I'm asking the minister something, and if the minister can respond. Please, Minister. Minister, could you respond, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I will go back once I complete the final few questions left by the honourable members of Parliament and go back to the answer posed, or go back to the question posed by MP La Cruz and provide him with the answer.
Thank you, Minister. You may continue with your answers.
I will repeat the question because I didn't get to give the full answer. That question was, the hindrance of budget 2025 hinders everyone, but if we were playing politics, the longer it goes on, the less this government is able to produce it. It benefits the opposition. Through you, Madam Chair, the budget impacts everyone indeed, and while it may appear to benefit the opposition in some way, we must remember that we are all elected to serve the people of St. Martin. I sincerely hope that politics will not get in the way of moving forward with the same budget that was previously approved, especially given the valid reasons for its return in this form.
Minister, we have an interruption from the member Otley, to whom I give the floor now for interruption.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I think it's very important, especially to the viewing public. That was a statement, and if you're going to take a statement, you cannot make it seem as if I'm saying that I'm happy because it benefits the opposition. What was stated, Madam Chair, if you allow me to clarify, verbatim, was that the Honorable Minister of Finance speaks about playing politics. And I stated, if we were playing politics, we would not have sent numerous requests to get this meeting done and get a solution. Because the longer it drags out, the more it would benefit us. However, for the fact that we are trying to find a solution, we are not playing politics. So I need to clarify that for the public of St. Martin. Thank you.
That is clear, MP Otley. Minister, MP Otley has clarified his statement, and I now give you the floor to continue.
And now move on to questions by MP De Wever. MP De Wever asked, there is no subsidy for Carnival because you have to follow the subsidy protocol and that the money used for the subsidy is used in that manner. How are we going to move forward with providing for Carnival? This year we paid out 600,000 guilders. Clarification going forward, but also the Carnival Foundation would like to know how to go about getting money every Carnival. Through you, Madam Chair, that's a great question, and I believe the most suitable person to answer it would be the Minister of TIAT, since there is a signed MOU between SCDF and the Minister of TIAT regarding the way forward for potential future subsidies to SCDF and all matters relating to Carnival. And lastly, MP La Vega, who's looking forward to hearing how the minister will streamline the budgetary process in the future. Madam Chair, through you, in order to streamline the process going forward, we need to establish clear guidelines, as it became evident during this budgetary process that there were various interpretations regarding amendments, particularly how they should be formulated and presented. As previously mentioned, I intend to either engage SOAB or broaden the scope of the TERIO assignment, as it is essential for a neutral third party to facilitate discussions with all relevant stakeholders. The objective is to produce a detailed and commonly agreed upon report outlining the process and expectations surrounding amendments. This would bring much needed clarity and serve as a reference to help prevent similar issues from occurring in the future. This brings me to the end of the responses to the questions posed. And members of Parliament can expect to receive the revised 2025 budget next week, and I look forward to returning to Parliament to have this budget debated and passed, hopefully in a timely and efficient manner. At this time, I'm going to go back to the question by MP Lacruz. And the question was, if Soul Beach is a company, a U.S. LLC, how is it possible that Soul Beach could request a subsidy and be paid a subsidy by the government of St. Martin? The National Subsidy Ordinance distinguishes between annual subsidies and incidental subsidies, while Article 8.2 defines eligibility for the annual subsidy requiring an entity to be incorporated by notarial deed and registered with the Chamber of Commerce. The incidental subsidy is a separate discretionary measure. It is designed to support projects that deliver significant benefits to St. Martin, even if the entity receiving the subsidy is registered abroad. In the case of Soul Beach Music Festival, the subsidy was awarded as an incidental subsidy, despite Soul Beach being registered in the United States. The evaluation criteria for this grant focus on its community impact and economic benefits. Therefore, the funding decision fully complied with the intended framework of the ordinance and does not conflict with the local registration provision for annual subsidies. I now thank you, Madam Chair. That comes to the end of all questions posed during the first round.
Thank you, Minister. Of course, following that, we have the opportunity for clarifications. But before I go over the clarifications, we'll take a brief adjournment of just 5 minutes. This meeting is adjourned for 5 minutes. Oh, somebody outside? Oh. Kelly out there. Kelly. Yes. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for your patience as we continue after a brief adjournment. And we have had the Minister responding to questions posed by members of Parliament on this agenda point, which was to speak to the budget, the draft budget, or the budget actually, 2025. And we have now reached where, following the answers by the Minister, the possibility for members to request clarification is now here, and I look to see if any member would like to make use of the opportunity for clarification, and I start with MP La Cruz. MP La Cruz, you have the floor for clarifications.
A blessed afternoon, Madam Chair Lady. Thank you. Madam Chair Lady, through you, to the Minister of Finance, the discussion concerning the subsidy, if it's annual or incidental, I'm going to leave that to rest and give the Minister some time to go over that again. And we will have that discussion then, as she requested, with the Minister of TIAT when she comes in. Because it makes absolutely no sense to me, and I know it doesn't make any sense. I am going to post the ordinance on my social media so that others could also take a read into it and see what was said today is totally incorrect. But I understand the minister's point that it has nothing to do, it is a TIAT problem. Then, Madam Chair Lady, I have another problem, which is simple. The fact that members of Parliament request documentation.
MP?
Madam Chair Lady, may I finish?
No,
please?
because I'm reminding you that it's actually a clarification.
This is a clarification,
Okay,
but I
so
need
get
to,
to it.
Yes.
You may continue,
I think,
MP La Cruz.
thank you, Madam Chair Lady. I think it is crazy that members of Parliament, even as confidential, we cannot request documents to be able to do our jobs here in Parliament, which is keep the government in check. I am starting to feel that this is a lawless country. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
MP La Cruz, you had any question in that regard to be clarified by the minister? Not really. You just made two comments. Okay, MP La Cruz, we continue. I have now MP Otley. MP Otley, you have the floor for clarifications.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, this is probably one of the only times that you'll hear me say that I disagree with MP La Cruz on one statement, when he said that it is the responsibility of the Minister of TIAT. No. Madam Chair, The Minister of Finance read answers, read procedures, and said these answers were given by the Minister of TEAT. In my view, if it's confusion, I'm throwing the Minister of TEAT under the bus. This is a meeting, Madam Chair, that last meeting I said I can't wait for the budget. And today this meeting was a bit redundant because I'm hearing ask TEAT, ask TEAT, ask TEAT. And TEAT, again, does not pay. So, Madam Chair, through you, I have one point of clarification. Was a discussion had with the Minister of TEAT when you received the answers? Or was it just emailed to your person? Was a discussion had? Because, in my view, no clarity is given to the Minister of Finance. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Utley. Your request that be clarified, given the fact that the minister mentioned answers provided by the Minister of TEAT, and you're asking if there was any consultation on it. The minister would respond to that as I continue, and I see the next one up, the next MP up for clarifications is MP Irian. MP Irian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the concerns by the MPs, or at least the ones that showed concern for the spending of the funds of government, and basically, since the law was not followed, the illegal process of taking money out of the Treasury and paying a US-based entity without following any sort of legislation. So there was no legal basis to execute. And the fact of the matter is that my faction, I believe even the UP faction, we have requested a meeting on Soul Beach that has been delayed for weeks. And the fact that today we're playing hot potato between the Minister of Finance and the Minister of TEAT regarding the issue on Soul Beach shows that no one wants to take accountability because it is a mistake. And technically, right, the money then should be returned. Because in Article 43 of our compatibility law, it says the Minister of Finance is the one responsible for the finances of the country and the budget. In addition to that, the Ministry of Finance has contributed to Soul Beach. I can't imagine that an advice comes in from TEAT, and we can contribute towards it, but we're not going to read the advice or know what we're contributing towards. But the minister also did mention, I want to clarify that, Madam Chair, the minister mentioned that the Soul Beach advice did not follow all the procedures because it did not go to FBB, and it did not even go to the SG of Finance. So the fact that we have an advice that went from TEAT to directly to the Council of Ministers shows irresponsibility in the Council of Ministers, and that be, like I said, it's hard for us to even trust going forward. In addition to that, Madam Chair, I want to clarify again to you, Madam Chair, if a LLC, an American company, qualifies for a subsidy, then we are opening the floodgates for every single company in St. Martin to be able to qualify too. Because we can't say that an American company doesn't have to follow the subsidy ordinance, but then the local companies that want to apply for subsidy can't. So precedent has been set, and I'm assuming that it's public, expectations have been created, so the government cannot now go and refuse businesses.
MP, you have a clarification request to the minister?
That's going to be my question now. So
Okay.
Can the government, based on this, refuse local businesses from requesting subsidies? The minister mentioned that a point about discretionary matters. Yes, but even for those discretionary matters, a decree has to be made. So why am I deviating from the ordinance, and does Soul Beach fit the national plan of St. Martin to help the youth and community base and so forth? Was that decree published? Can the public see this decree? In addition to that, if we're going to support businesses, in the law itself states it has to be, if you're not going to follow the ordinance, it has to be in the national budget. That's why Carnival is there. That's why St. Martin Music Festival is there. That's why we even had a festival back in the days of Regatta and Stage Show, because all of those, even though we didn't send the money over, all of them were budgeted in the budget. So then a lot of these requirements then maybe wouldn't apply. But that's not the case. Through you, Madam Chair, I would like an answer from the minister. Based on the answers, but it wasn't clear, did the entity Soul Beach request a subsidy? Because that's one of the top 2 points of the subsidy ordinance. Did the entity request subsidy? Through you, Madam Chair, I would like to know, if a subsidy is being given, can the government now go and find extra funds outside of the government apparatus, for example, the airport and the port, among others, to give funding to this entity? Is that part of the subsidy ordinance? Would that still qualify as part of the subsidy ordinance?
MP
Was
Urian, I
this-
need to ask you to really
Yes.
use clarification round for
Was-
clarification.
I-
Something the
I-
minister said or answered, and you can ask her to clarify.
I asked for the process and how this advice is approved. So I'm going to ask again. Was this advice approved by the Council of Ministers? A direct answer. Was this advice approved by the Council of Ministers? And all the answers that the minister read today on behalf of the Minister of TIAT, I asked this earlier, I didn't get an answer. Does the minister agree with the answers? Does she stand by every answer that she read today? That'll be all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Irian. I don't see any other member requesting clarification. And Minister, do you need some time before I offer you the floor to respond? Yes, and an indication as to how much time for the clarification questions? Minister, you may respond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would ask for 15 minutes, please.
Thank you, Minister, and this meeting will be adjourned until 5:15, 5:15. Meeting adjourned. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, we are in this public meeting of Parliament with the Minister of Finance providing answers to matters pertaining to the budget 2025. We had the adjournment to allow the Minister to prepare for the answers to clarification requests as posed by members of Parliament. So I immediately give the floor to the Minister to respond to the requests for clarification as posed by members of Parliament. Minister Gums, you have the floor.
Thank you once again, Madam Chair. I would go to the clarification question posed by MP Arian. Number 1 concerns spending funds of government and the illegal process of taking money without following legislation. Madam Chair, through you, as answered by the Minister of TIAT, the subsidy was given based on the subsidy ordinance. Question 2, the Minister, or clarification 2, sorry, the Minister mentioned that Soul Beach Advice did not follow correct procedures. It did not go FBA nor to SG Finance. So the fact that we have an advice that went directly to the Council of Ministers. Madam Chair, through you, as answered by the Minister of TIAT, the advice did not go directly to COM. An advice was received from the Department of Legal Affairs, of which all recommendations were incorporated before finalizing the advice. A procedural step at the Department of FBA was inadvertently missed as the process moved forward, and the advice was ultimately approved by the Council of Ministers. Next clarification. If LLC qualifies, then precedent is set. Can government refuse local businesses? Answer, Madam Chair, through you, any subsidy request received by government will be assessed based on the subsidy ordinance. Clarification 4, was the decree published? Madam Chair, through you, no, it was not. Question 5, clarification 5, is it in the national budget? Madam Chair, through you, as answered by the Minister of TIAT, it was taken from the festival's budget for the year 2024. Clarification 6, did the entity Soul Beach request a subsidy? As Madam Chair, through you, as previously answered on behalf of the Minister of TIAT, the official request was submitted by the entity. Clarification 7, if a subsidy being given, can government now go outside government apparatus to fund? Is this accordance to the subsidy ordinance? Madam Chair, through you, all companies have the rights to sponsor an event. This happens with Carnival, also with the Heineken Regatta. And clarification 8, was this advice approved by the Council of Ministers? Madam Chair, through you, yes, it was approved by the Council of Ministers. Clarification 9, all answers read by the Minister. Does the Minister agree with these answers? Madam Chair, through you, as stated, these answers were received on my way here, and based on the feedback, I intend to discuss them with the Minister of TIAT further. I now move on to questions, clarifications posed by MP Otley. Was a discussion had with Minister of TIAT when received these answers? Madam Chair, through you, no. On my way to Parliament, the answers were provided, and out of respect to the members of Parliament, I answered the questions posed. That is it for the clarification questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister Gums, for those answers provided to the clarifications as requested by members of Parliament. And members of Parliament, we now go over to the second round of this meeting, and the order of speakers will follow the speakers list, and the speakers list looks as follows. We would have had MP Doran, who, as I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, has given notice of his absence. And then the next speaker would be MP Arian. MP Arian, I invite you to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Didn't realize I was next up.
You are?
Thank you. Madam Chair, basically, based on the answers given by the Minister of TIAT, I can only conclude that the Minister is distancing herself from the Minister of TIAT and everything related to Soul Beach, the Soul Beach advice, and Soul Beach itself. So that's going to be my question to the Minister. Minister, based on your answers, because, through you, Madam Chair, the Minister did not answer any of my clarifications on, based on her perspective, it basically was a repetition of saying what the Minister of TIAT said when my questions were directly posed to the Minister. One of the questions I posed to the Minister was, Minister, based on the fact that a U.S. LLC received an incidental subsidy without following the subsidy ordinance, the entity, I even asked, did the entity, did the LLC, did the Soul Beach company request for a subsidy? Print. Did Soul Beach, the entity, whichever entity is behind it, request for a subsidy? Because that is part of the subsidy ordinance. That is part of it. The Minister, Madam Chair, the Ministry of Finance, it's co-sponsor of Soul Beach. It's not even on TIAT. The Ministry of Finance is a co-sponsor of Soul Beach. Is a TIAT, the Ministry of Finance event. They're co-sponsors. So I'm assuming that the Minister agrees with the event and the way it was done. So my question again is, Minister, are you distancing yourself from it? Or maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea if someone takes accountability and say, hey, we messed up. This is not how it's supposed to be done. Maybe we have to request the money back. Matter of fact, I would like to know, is there anything in the Soul Beach advice contract negotiations that we can't get back the money from Soul Beach if things go wrong? So let's say the event doesn't happen, right? Is there any kind of clause that does not allow us to get the money back? Through you, Madam Chair. Again, the Minister said that Soul Beach is a misclassification, but in the same breath said that all the right procedures are followed and legal affairs also vetted and gave advice. So what I would like from the Minister, through Madam Chair, Minister, can you confirm, because we have confirmation now, that it did not go through finance. So it did not go through FAB, it did not go by SG Finance, so it skipped your ministry, which is a little strange. But can you confirm and verify that legal affairs did give advice on this? And if that's the case, I would like to have a summary, because I know if I ask for the advice, I'm not going to get it. So what I would like then is a summary of the advice of legal affairs. So if they had any negative comments, I would like that noted. If they had any positive comments, I would like that noted. And if they give comments saying, hey, this is the way it should be done, I would also like that noted. So can I get a summary of the legal affairs advice? Please, Madam Chair, Minister, I would like to understand, again, the misclassification. So is it that Soul Beach, because the answers given said that Soul Beach received funds from the festival's budget. The festival's budget, as far as I remember, is actually a subsidy budget. So if it's a misclassification, where should they have gone? So where should they have requested the money from? In addition to that, how much is the festival budget and how much funds have already been allocated or used up from this budget, and to which entities? Can a BV, NV, PFF, can any legal entity registered at the Chamber of Commerce request subsidy incidental from the government? And if so, can you see yourself approving these subsidies once they fit in the government's national plan? I asked this question earlier in the first meeting, I believe. Did the port pay additional funds? Because I asked exactly, I want to know exactly how they were paid. So did the port just pay the regular concession? Did the port pay extra fees? So they paid in advance on the concession? In one of the answers given by the Minister of TIAT formerly, the Minister of TIAT said that the port owes, I think it was more than 10 million guilders. So I would like to clarify, how much money does the port owe? Because if the port is making advance payments in 2024, then the answer given by the minister is wrong, because then the 2024 amendment would have shown extra funds coming in. And then the 2025 budget will show less because they made advance payments. So did the port make advance payments on their concessions to be able to pay for Soul Beach? Or did they pay Soul Beach directly? Did the airport pay Soul Beach directly? So can we confirm how much funds came on the account in 2024 and how much can we expect in 2025? I heard in press briefing, and I think this question was even asked in December, but I heard in press briefing that Soul Beach asked for a tax exemption and this was denied. When did Soul Beach ask for this tax exemption? And tax exemption based on what? What were they asking exemption for? Minister, this is, again, because this is just a couple of questions, and these answers, we're going to head into a sort of, a small a budget debate soon, because the budget's coming back, and these are questions that I believe affect the budget now, the annual budgets, and budget 2026, and the amendment going forward. I understood from someone at the airport, and that's because of my previous position and actually denying the airport this, I heard that SMMC actually received a hardship clause. Did, and I'm even clear on that, when I had that request, it was not granted. So I would like to know, did the medical center, against advice, because the advice was there when I was there, receive a hardship clause? And if that's the case, will the airport receive such? Because they also asked for it. And Madam Chair, I'm really hoping that we get some answers. I'm even hoping, because like I mentioned before, we did request a meeting for Soul Beach in addition to the tariffs. And today we see how important that was, because even the Minister of Finance is saying, hey, no, let the minister come and answer these questions. So I'm hoping that the Presidium could do something and talk to the ministers and have the ministers come, or maybe even bring both the ministers in together to deal with these questions. That'll be all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Irian. I continue with the speakers list for this meeting, and the next member to speak is MP Lacruz. MP Lacruz, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. Madam Chair Lady, there's so much things that are wrong with this whole situation that I think it is best to have this discussion during the budget debate. So I am going to leave it rest here. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP Lacruz. The next speaker is MP Otley. MP Otley, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, thank you. And just like how earlier I said I would disagree, this time I would agree wholeheartedly with my colleague, MP Lacruz. We need to save some of this stuff for the budget debate, because this is an example of not being in order, not being able to convince members of parliament, nor, I'm pretty sure, majority of the public that your house is in order, Madam Chair. Because, Madam Chair, if this meeting is a representation of what is to come for the budget, then we are in trouble. We are in serious trouble because this meeting today is an update on the 2025 budget. And if we're hearing answers that can't be elucidated properly, we're hearing documents cannot be shared, but we are expected to approve a budget when it comes. During my first speech in the first round, I said, ensure what needs to be fixed is fixed. So I will render some advice again, Madam Chair, through you. Ensure collaboration, communication between ministers is done before the budget 2025 debate part 2. Ensure, because what I saw today was miscommunication, misrepresentation, and no trust. As a previous minister, when I receive answers from my colleague ministers, I would review, I would go through, and I would adjust. And moreover so, being that the minister stated she only now received the questions on her way here, I would like to also ask one question. When was the questions sent to the Honorable Minister of TEAT? When were they sent? Because to make it look like TEAT sent it last minute, we need to ensure, through you, Madam Chair, that Finance sent it at a timely fashion and manner. I look forward to the budget, and there I'll save whatever questions, comments, and we'll see how we vote when that time comes, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Otley. I continue, and the next speaker up, according to the speakers list, is MP De Weaver. MP De Weaver, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and good afternoon to everyone. Just as a reminder that this meeting was about the update of the budget process so that all of us would understand as MPs what is going on in terms of the delay of the ratification of the budget, which was approved back in January 2025. And it's pretty obvious to everyone that a lot of the discussion is going towards things that were not budgeted for, were paid out, and there's still a little bit of confusion as to how exactly it was done and whether it was done in alignment or, in a similar way of how we've been doing business of the people when it comes to subsidy. And I will repeat it again, Carnival-related subsidy, Heineken Regatta subsidy, that sort of thing. And I really tried to sort of organize my thoughts in a way that I acknowledge the fact that we still have to come here again and discuss the budget, which gives a lot of us opportunity as well to bring everything up then. But everyone touched on the differences that we have between the way that the subsidy is being handled. Specific attention is on the Soul Beach Festival, which is supposed to take place next week, as well as very briefly on the Carnival payout that was done this year. But I think my recommendation and advice would be for the minister to potentially really clarify what was done with the Soul Beach and Carnival in accordance with the way that we work when it comes to the subsidy ordinance, so that for once and for all that we could actually not draw a line under it, but then we know the right way of doing things and the wrong way of doing things and the sort of loose way of doing things, and then do it the right way going forward, right? And one of the things was brought up in the clarification round about the annual subsidy versus the incidental subsidy by one of the MPs. And this is where a lot of the confusion starts, because as we enter into the budget debate that's going to come, I will say that in accordance with the budget that is coming back to Parliament, that we have to debate all over again, I hope that I can expect a budget that is free of misinterpretation, free of misunderstandings, free of misallocations, and free of misinformation. And saying that, I will focus on the budget-related questions back then, because the minister came in here today to answer the delays of the budget. But I cannot disregard the issues that we still have about the subsidy. And I want to go back here so that everyone, I'm not going to talk about illegal, illegal or legal. I want to talk exactly about how we do the subsidy ordinance and what is explained, or what I picked out from the legislation, the ordinance, right? It specifically says that institutions that receive the subsidy has to be for a not-for-profit. But then the minister explains to us in her answers received from the Ministry of TEAT that Soul Beach is an LLC. And what I remember of an LLC, it's a limited liability company that basically kind of like protects the members of it. Most of the time, a LLC operates for profit. It's really difficult to have a LLC that's a non-profit, which is why people just keep it simple as a non-profit. So thinking about the definition in here of institutional requirements in our subsidy ordinance, this is where I have to make sure, again, reiterate to the minister via you, Madam Chair Lady, that we clarify the way that things have been handled in St. Martin before, specifically for the subsidy that we are all familiar with, which is the Carnival and the Heineken Regatta. Because what happens is, for a one-off ad hoc subsidy, it has to happen 2 months before the event, which means that in my understanding, that was done because we already knew about this event happening more than 2 months in advance. The minister announced it I think since November, December, January, we knew about this. So whatever was done in the background in government was done more than 2 months in advance. Now, if we're talking about the recurring annual subsidy, like what we all expected with the Carnival and Heineken Regatta, I remember that one of the obligations is that you basically have to report it. It has to be part of the budget, and they have to say if we have any additional specifications for those entities, those nonprofit entities, they have to explain how they're using the subsidy. Government can actually restrict the subsidy to them and say, well, it could only be for this purpose. Back in the day, the understanding was Carnival, they would get a subsidy for marketing, and they had to show, and they should have shown in their audits that it was for marketing-related expenses. So this is what I want to only have an ask of the minister, through you, to really clarify that for us, because, again, the subsidy ordinance is clear, and also I acknowledge that maybe if there's any supplement to the original ordinance, that could also be explained by the minister. I think if once we have that, then it will help us go a long way. But I would really hope that we have already been delayed since January to now today, May 15th of 2025 budget, that we really draw the line under all this this sort of misunderstanding around a subsidy. Just give the definitions, give what happened, whether the money had to be pulled from various accounts, just explain it. Just explain how it happened. Because I am not saying that the Council of Ministers did something illegal or legal. There is a process. Where did we divert from that process? And are we going to continue going down the road of moving away from the way that we have been working in the past? I just want to understand what was the more common way of working in the past. And then maybe then we will have less sort of confusion around the subsidy, no subsidy, nonprofit, LLC, whether, it is applicable here. Because I will say that, this issue of a LLC receiving a subsidy, it leaves a little bit of a bitter taste in the mouth of local entities that also struggle. And it's not, I'm not saying it for nothing, because everybody, if you are aware of what is happening in the country, we have a lot of work, a lot of pressure going on nonprofit organizations to just help our people do this regular day-to-day things. And whether that is feeding seniors, whether that is providing food for everybody, everything that nonprofits are doing for us that are helping with the work that technically government is responsible for. And I'm not saying that it should only be government and not nonprofits, no. But there is so much pressure right now on the nonprofit groups that it leaves a bad taste if there is this narrative going out in the public that an entity like a LLC, which is not a nonprofit, receives so much money. And then the ones here are lacking and struggling. And it's just to explain this because this meeting is public. So those people are going to ask for an understanding on how we prioritize who should get and not. And I am not ignoring the fact that the minister stated there is an economic benefit. Time check? An economic benefit of this Soul Beach Subsidy LLC happening next week. I'm not denying that. I'm absolutely not. I just need to understand how we can justify this to the public because it's been done. And then you see all the other stuff happening now that you wanted to see maybe, well, should we have saved it or not? We're past that point. The point is just to explain how it was done, whether it was right or wrong, and then we can move on and focus on the budget and coming back here next week, the week after, whenever you do come back, Minister, as you stated in June, for us to have that conversation again. The last thing that I want to make maybe a question about or a statement, we'll see how it comes out, is we had a discussion on a request for information from the Yeas and Way, the Justice Review, the Legal Affairs of Government. And, you know, I just as a reminder, not for myself, but publicly as well as Parliament holds the ministers accountable. The 7 ministers have to come in here whenever we call them. I'm not holding the staff of Yeas and Way or any other department accountable. It is the ministers that are representing them for the good and for the bad that anybody can accuse them of doing. So just keep this in mind. And I'm not saying that I'm not entitled to something, but it's for the minister to basically be very clear on what we can share and not, because I don't expect to see the head of the Department of Yeas and Way across from me. I expect to hold the minister in charge of Yeas and Way accountable with whoever else has to fall in place. So it's not talking about confidential documents, it's talking about the expectations of our role here with what the ministers are supposed to do. Thank you very much, Madam Chair Lady.
Thank you, MP De Weaver, for your questions and comments. The next speaker would have been, according to the speakers list, MP Labega, who is not present and with notification of his absence. And then the next speaker would be MP Weaver. MP Weaver, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, I would say, to the griffier, to the Honourable Minister, support staff, my honourable colleagues, those in the tribune here with us, and those listening or watching via whichever media. I think a lot of important things were discussed here today. I want to take the time to also thank the Minister for taking the time out to coming here. And I will also await the return of the budget, which is supposed to be heading down to Parliament shortly. And I think that is where the focus should be on right now, and to get that passed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Weaver. I look to the Minister. Minister, you have heard MPs speak and offer their opinion and comment on the topic. I can't really see the topic at hand because those would have been the technical issues in the budget, but you have heard some very relevant comments regarding finances, the finances of government, and I ask if you are ready to respond to the questions that have been posed. There were not many, but there were some questions. Minister, your response?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to echo the initial statements by MPs Lacruz, MP Otley, MP De Weaver, and MP Weaver as it regards to the purpose of me coming here to answer the questions related or giving an update based on budget 2025. Instead, a lot of questions came from Soul Beach or about Soul Beach. which has nothing to do with Budget 2025. Nevertheless, I do understand the importance of the questions posed concerning Soul Beach or any other question related to Soul Beach by the honorable MPs. I understand the importance of it, and if allowed, I would like to provide those answers in writing, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister, for that proposal. I look to the members of Parliament if that would be, that we can close this meeting with the understanding that the outstanding questions will be answered in writing. And I see MP Iran. MP Iran, you may respond to my proposal to the members. MP Iran, your response.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for clarification, typically we always say in obeys, answers, questions posed verbally are supposed to come back verbally. So I just want to know, because what I don't want to have, Madam Chair, is, especially, maybe us being opposition sometimes, is like the coalition gets to break the rules, for example, at their convenience. And then when it comes to our questions are posed and trying to do similar things is different. So is it the norm? Is it because when we ask for it in the future, it also has to be granted? Personally, we have a lot of persons viewing again, a lot of questions, and PD even mentioned a lot of entities. I also have a lot of foundations, NGOs tuned in, and they want to hear the answers verbally. And we have a history of getting answers, not saying particular from the Minister of Finance, but from this government very, very late. So my preference is to have it verbally, but I leave it up to the ministers. And I would like clarification on the obey and answering. What is the procedure typically?
Let me address your query regarding the public meetings of Parliament, and yes, indeed, that's the routine of public meetings. As you know, public meetings are bound by certain procedures, and one of them being first and second rounds, questions asked, ministers answer, and then that would be the end of the meeting. Given, however, that the topic veered away from the agenda point per se towards the issue of the subsidy by government to the Soul Beach Music Festival. The minister, during her presentation, actually indicated that she would prefer the Minister of TIAT, from whom she gave the answers regarding the Soul Beach issue, that the Minister of TIAT be afforded the opportunity to respond to those. So those answers we have to get. And because of that situation surrounding Soul Beach Music Festival, my question was whether members would like to give get the answers to those questions in particular. I know there are also some other requests from members of Parliament regarding the topic of Soul Beach itself and questions having been posed. So, but if the members would prefer us to adjourn the meeting and have the minister come back, then that can also happen. I look to the minister and ask, is minister, the questions that are outstanding, and as far as you can answer them, are those questions you can answer. But you did propose that it be answered in writing, and then my question would be if you had to come back to Parliament in this meeting, when that would be. I see MP Otley is requesting the floor, and MP Otley, I guess it's a response to what I put to the floor, because like that we can have a discussion, and I would allow you to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I've heard many of our MPs here, including myself, echo the sentiment of waiting for the 2025 budget. I would like to ask you, Madam Chair, if it relates to verbal or writing for me, it depends on the proximity of the 2025 budget debate. If it's in the near future, within the next week or two maximum, I have no issue with writing. If it's longer than that, then I would like it verbally.
Thank you for your contribution to the discussion. MP Otley, I now look to the minister, who can probably answer your question regarding the proximity of the budget to Parliament.
Thank you, Madam
Gomes.
Chair, and thank you for your question, MP Otley. With regards to coming back to answer these questions from round two, I believe I will come back within 2 weeks, physically, to answer these questions.
And Minister, may I ask you, I think you had said it at the beginning of the meeting in terms of the budget, how close, you did mention when it could be anticipated that we will be getting the draft 2025 budget as resubmitted. Let me use that word.
Yes, correct.
And that is?
State that the budget is anticipated to come to Parliament as early as next week.
As early as next week, and then we would have to schedule it in. Then, members of Parliament, I would suggest for the few outstanding questions, there were a lot of comments from members of Parliament that for the few outstanding questions on Soul Beach, that the minister submit those in writing, and then we have heard that the budget, the draft budget as submitted, will be at Parliament next week, and then we will start the scheduling. There is a proposal for the handling of that budget that the members will get, but until that time, then that would allow me to close this meeting. The minister promises to have the answers I would ask as soon as possible, but in any case, we will receive the budget 2025 next week here in Parliament. Members of Parliament, I thank you for your participation. Minister and support staff, I thank you for your presence here and responding to members of Parliament, to the support staff of Parliament, and of course to all persons tuned in to this meeting. Thank you, and I hereby close this meeting of Parliament. Meeting closed.